Well, hello there, YouTube. It's Monday, April 1st, 2024, and today I've got a big video for you. I'm going to install all of this. That's right, the flex disc, the propeller shaft, that boot, the brackets, the rear engine mount. In addition to that, I'm also going to be installing this Bowden cable and that vacuum line that goes onto the modulator, as well as the linkage and virtually everything that's involved to bring this transmission where it belongs, right? Because I've installed everything, but not really, not until you put on the harness onto it and fix all the electrical. You know, it's going to be a kind of a big video. There's a lot of things going on. So no more wasting time. I want to thank you guys for subscribing. Remember, I'm going to be starting this car live on YouTube. That's the plan. We'll see how all that goes. But if you would, you know, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and let's get this video going. In my other video, I installed these front engine mount brackets and the engine shock absorbers. And I left them loose because I have all of this to yet install. In fact, I should have actually installed this shaft, this front propeller shaft, into the vehicle before I dropped the transmission in. So that's a tip. But now I'm going to install it. Here are the instructions for the removal and installation of the propeller shaft. But there's another thing we have to pay real close attention to. When your shaft is separated, you have to be careful because all of these are balanced as one complete unit, your front propeller shaft and your rear propeller shaft. So these are the alignment lines that they're talking about. So there's the two right there. It's got that little mark right here, but it's really hard to see. So I thought I'd go ahead and put a marker on that thing to make it a little bit easier to see and do the same thing underneath. Just like that. Now, before I did this, I took this nut completely off and I made sure these threads were completely clean, and I've lubricated this now with oil. And I also made sure all the splines inside here were nice and clean, and I'm not really going to tighten that at all. Before I start installing everything, let's do this first. To do this job, you're probably going to need some new things. So here's the part number for the boot that fits on there. And this is the one I took off. Now, previously, before I parked this car in 2008, I had already done all the suspension. So I put all this brand new on there. This thing doesn't even have 200 miles on it. It's genuine Mercedes, and chipped all up in here. I bought another genuine Mercedes. I mean, that's what this is as well. But I'm going to see about lubricating this a little bit differently. Somehow it must have gotten caught. I don't know. I have no idea why all these little cuts would be in here. I would also suggest you check your companion plate for any cracks or anything. I bought a new one of that. And you also always have to replace your nuts because they're one-time use. I bought a complete kit. It's made in Germany. I bought this particular one instead of the Mercedes, and the reason for that is this. This is the one I took off. I actually purchased this brand new when I put it on, and then it's been sitting, obviously, since 2008. But this is the actual disc. It was new when I purchased it, genuine Mercedes. But this thing actually cracks. You see that crack? That crack, for example? Or this crack goes all the way to there. This other crack. Now watch when I flip this thing over. You see those cracks? Just like I was saying. This completely cracked through, and I'll spin it around. You see? I'm just very surprised at all the cracks when I've done really nothing. So I decided to go with a different manufacturer, and I can't remember what it is. It's made in Germany. Those are the numbers that you can see on it. Let's see what else we have. That number. And then that SBR, and that's it. The other side doesn't have any markings, and I can't find the receipt. Besides this, you'll also need some grease, and this is what I'm using. I believe it qualifies all the specifications for Mercedes, but that's the one I'm using. All right, so here are the instructions. There's a link to the manual on the bottom of every single one of my videos where the manual is needed. So now you know that. Here we are, the installation. So it tells us to fill these little cavities up with grease. This is what they're talking about right here. So I'm going to put some grease into here. So that's about how I did it right there. Next, I'll apply some grease onto the spline here. And I'm just going to lightly get it on there, but I want to make sure that I get it everywhere because, you know, I don't want any metal to metal contact basically. So you want to kind of just lightly grease this entire shaft. I'm turning the drive shaft and everything so I can make sure I've got it evenly coated around the entire spleen. You saw how that other one was all torn up right up here. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on that part. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this back side as it slips onto the shaft. So now I'm going to put this on first. There's a fatter side and a skinnier side. So this fatter side faces the propeller shaft. So let's go install this. I think we discovered the reason why the end of this got broken. So let's hopefully, in this hot water, if that is enough to soften it. After sliding the boot on, I added more grease. I went ahead and put some grease on the inside spline, made sure my nut is completely nice and loose, and I have my marker. Down below, my marker is ready to go. The shaft is greased. Let's install it. Right now, my transmission is on a jack, and I have it jacked all the way up so I can get up behind there and put this to the side, and then I will lower the jack. Then I'll see if I can push this propeller shaft in from over the top of the transmission and then give us enough clearance. It looks like my alignment lines are matched up perfectly. I can't believe I did that on the first try. Next, we need to install this. And in order to do that, there's some tools you're going to need. You're going to need a 19 millimeter. And then for these is a 10 millimeter hex. And finally, a torque wrench capable of 65 Newton meters. These are M12s. If yours is, I'm sure yours is an M12 too, but if not, there are some M10s, and that's at 45 Newton meters. This image here is very important if you'll notice where the washers go. You see the number 13 and where it is there at the top, and then there at the bottom, so you have to pay close attention to this as you install it. I've seen guys actually do it wrong. The nut ends, all of them, go towards the transmission side. Here's a little tidbit that I'm going to do that you don't have to do. It's not in the manual or anything like that. But the side that has the lettering, I'm facing that towards the propeller shaft. I'm sure you also realize that there are 3 of these on each side that have to go into the proper slots. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of petroleum jelly on the flanges of both the transmission side and the propeller shaft side. Next, I'll take the companion plate and pay close attention to those little tabs and align it into both flanges. As I install this, I want to make sure, of course, that I put these bolts and washers in the proper area. So I'm going to leave that up on the screen as a reminder. I have plenty of room in here, so I'm going to put it on the transmission side first. And then I will put it on to the propeller shaft side. So now that I have all my bolts and washers and nuts all installed, I'm going to start snugging this down, but I'm going to be really equal with the pressure. And I'm going to go in a crisscross type pattern. You know, there's a little cutout where those pins fit in. And I want to make sure that every single pin fits exactly how it's supposed to fit, and slowly bring this together equally along all the sides. I've already got everything snugged up to about 55 Newton meters, but these are M12s and we need to get to 65 Newton meters, and I'm going to take care of this in a crisscross type fashion. I'm going to stay on this one side, flip to the other side, and just bring it on up to 65 Newton meters. $65.6. $65. $65.6. $65.6. $65.4. Marked, 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 and marked. Done. And this is looking at it at a different angle. I put this line on here for reference. But what I'm really looking for is to make sure that this companion plate seated properly in the flanges. And I'm just checking each and every single one of them. Everything's been torqued down and looks like everything's seated nice. So there you go. So I've now tightened all those nuts to 65 Newton meters as it shows in step number 15. I don't know why in the manual Mercedes calls this a companion plate. You know, everybody calls it a flex disc. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of research, and I found out, well, here's the difference between a flex disc and a companion plate. So you can take a snapshot of that if you want. So if all you're doing is replacing this flex disc, then really this is all you'd have to do right now. And then tighten that big, I think it's 46 millimeter, that big old nut that's on the propeller shaft. You see here I suggest that you place the vehicle on the ground before tightening. That's just to make sure that everything is in its natural position. Mainly that one on the propeller shaft. Make sure that the car is kind of on the ground before you tighten that to your 30 to 40 Newton meters. Now I'm not going to do this right now because I've got to actually put together the rear engine mount. And you can see there's not much to it. Although you do have to pay attention to a couple of things. One of those things has to do with how this is made. Do you see these little nibs right here? Those need to be on the same side as your nut here, or your bolt. The manual shows a complete breakdown here and tells you exactly what each part is. And so I thought we'd do the same thing here. Now they say you have your bolt, you have a spring washer and a flat washer, and then this bracket. It says like number 8 right there. According to the manual, that's a spring washer, but when you zoom up on that, it's a lock washer. And the same thing with number 2. Number 2 says it's a spring washer, and you zoom up on that and it looks like a spring washer. This did not have a spring washer or a lock washer. So I put a lock washer on there, it makes sense. So this is it completely broken down. This is the bottom plate right here, and the 2 bolts, you're gonna have your cover, the black cover that fits on the bottom, go right here, into that. Then you have this with this slide out for that, like that. And this here, this is how they check to see. You put your finger in there and see if you have clearance. It's not that great. You can see how flexible that is. Now this is supposedly OEM. And it's made by REIN, Rain. This is a Phoebe, and this is a Rain. They are identical in every single way. They were made in the exact same molds. Everything is identical. Even the way that they clog these all up. This one here I haven't cleaned out. Phoebe puts their stamp on it. This one here just has the part number. So this is supposedly OEM, Mercedes, and then this one here is the Phoebe. And I just find them to be very, you know, not much to them, right? I mean, it's all about a soft ride, I guess. But let me show you what some guys are doing instead of this. They're doing this. This is out of a 300D heavy-duty transmission, or let's say rear engine mount. Everything is pretty much the same, but you can see how much bigger it is. There's a lot more rubber. It doesn't collapse like that other one. It's a little bit taller, and that's because you don't use that. So that's my tip to you. You can just use just this plate without the bracket. They still have the knobs on it though. You see that? So the knobs still go towards the outside. Same way. Just like that. But you can see how much more heavy duty this is. And you can't really collapse it. I could see why guys want to use it. I mean, it still has some flexibility, as you can tell. But not nearly as much as this. I'm going to do it, like I said, original, just how it came. But I'm going to keep this as an idea for later. Well, the instructions are pretty straightforward. You know, just the most important thing is that you need to run the engine for a short period of time at idle speed before you do a final torque on this number 9 bolt. That's this one right here. But I haven't even started this engine yet, so I've got a long ways to go before I get to that. What I need to do is get this thing assembled, go underneath the vehicle, and get this attached. Finally, this came in. I have been waiting a month for that. And what that is it's the O-ring for that speedometer pickup. After measuring it a few times, I would say that it's 20 millimeter inside diameter. And I would say it has a thickness of about 2 millimeters. And next to that speedometer pickup is the Kickdown solenoid connection. There's where it connects to, that Kickdown solenoid over there. There's another angle at it. This is from the other side. And it just plugs into that. I actually purchased a new boot for that. Here's the part number for that boot. And if you replace the connection, that's the special pin. It's not the same pins that I used on the wiring harness. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit longer. So all I need to do is get up underneath here. I'm just using this pick. And unfortunately, that thing's hard as a rock. But I just got a clip on it, managed to get this end off and slide that O-ring off, but it really is as hard as a rock. Can you tell which O-ring is which? New one versus old one? This one here is nice and plump and pliable and ready to go on. But first, I need to deal with this stuff here. Here it is installed. You can see how tight it is right there? I'm going to cut this wire right about there. Oh. I didn't lock it all down. Oh, you can see there's where it's broken. Let's take a closer look. That's where it's kind of frayed. You can see that broken wire. That was the first thing I saw. And so there's no way you're just going to repair that. I mean, you might be able to throw some solder on there, but the best thing you can do is just make a proper repair. So there's the pin inside there. That's this pin right here. So that's basically where it sits within this jacket right here. Here's the new part and the new pin. So I'll start by stripping this wire, and then I'll give it a good twist, make sure that it's ready. And here I'll start making my new connection with the new pin and new TXL wire. That's what my connection looks like after I completed it. Now I'm threading this wire through, and here comes the head. But first I'm going to put some dielectric grease on here, and then I'm going to pull it up to the shoulder here, and then I'll give it one last push and push it to the head, and then I'm just taking a copper wire with a tip and pushing it in so it seats. That thing will never come out. I guarantee it. Little dielectric grease. Let's do a quick fit check. Make sure it's seated. Grab my wire. Check for a good length here. And something about like that looks good. I'll snip it there. So you can see I gave it a little bit of extra because the last time it was just a little bit short. So now I'm making it a little extra longer. Same thing, I'll strip it, give it a little twist, and after I twist it, that's what it looks like. Now first, this is a sleeve I made, and I'm just going to sleeve this entire thing so it won't break there at the head ever again. This here is an adhesive one, so that way there I can get a nice glue tight fit. You'll see later as I put it all together. So that sleeve is sitting up there. That's your normal coupling, you know, your heat shrink with adhesive. Check my thing. My hand got in the way, but I soldered that joint, and this is a better look at it right here after I clean it up. And here comes that adhesive. I'll apply some heat to it until that adhesive comes out the tips on each end. And here's what it looks like when I'm all done. You can see it's protected up there now. It's not going to break there again. There's my connection with an adhesive heat shrink. And you can see I took that heat shrink, that little one that I made, and went completely back behind it. Now I'll put on the linkage here. I've already done a video on the neutral safety switch and how to adjust it and how to put on your linkage, so I'm not going to get into that there. But you'll notice the side that I put the bolt head to right here. That bolt head faces where the plug is, and the reason for that is when that plug is locked, it won't slip out. Now I'll just go ahead and put in the other part of the linkage here. Put on the retainer clip. And then I'll go ahead and test the neutral safety switch to make sure that the gear shift up on top all matches. And like I said, I've already done a video on that, so you can go ahead and see that video. Now I'll just add a little bit of dielectric grease on the plugs here for the neutral safety switch and attach the harness, making sure to push it all the way in nice and tight, and then lock the lever over, just like that. And now I'm back to that speedometer pickup O-ring. I'm going to use a little bit of petroleum jelly, just like I almost always do. Unfortunately, I forgot to switch the camera. Trust me, I installed it. And you thought we were done with O-rings. But no, we have to do the transmission dipstick O-ring. I want to measure that. After several measurements, I've determined this is about 15 millimeters inside diameter. That's about the best I can do for the thickness. I've got about 3.14. I'll put a little lubrication on here with the petroleum jelly, and then I'll go ahead and I'll insert this to here. See, it kind of fits snug on there, right? But not too tight. So that's good. It's more about the thickness, I think, than anything. Unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to see much. And I'll just kind of edge this thing down there, twisting it and getting it just about right. And then I'll push it on down and seat it. And then to snug that down, you're going to need a screw and a spring washer. Here's the part number for that screw. You're also going to need a 5mm hex. Then I'll just go ahead and hand thread this thing. It actually lined up perfectly. And I just snugged it up with my fingers first. Then I brought my wrench in, and I just took a long extension. I went all the way from the top. It worked out really easily. You can see I was able to get it nice and tight, got it all snugged up, and this is what it looks like. You can see I've got it perfectly snug. After you get it up, you have this clamp here. And then there's a metal post that attaches to the head. Another angle at it. Now let's turn our eyes onto the final engine mount of this guy right here. I thought you guys might be interested also on this nut. There's the part number and everything for this nut. And then this here is for these two screws or bolts down here. That feels much better. Those other bolts wouldn't even go in. I knew there was something not right with those things. I got to take off this bottom plate and take this with me. Again, those little things, I went ahead and highlighted them. Let's see if I can kind of do this without getting in your way here. And now we'll just tighten it up. You're going to need a 19mm to tighten this big nut. There's no torque specifications, so just tighten it up. And finally, I need to attach that big metal bracket there. And there are a total of 12 bolts. So in case you lost one, 2 of the ones that were on mine were the wrong ones. So I've got these 2 and I know exactly where I'm going to put them. Now I've already placed that little plate, that spacer plate, in the bottom of this. About where it's going to be landing. So I'm going to put it on there like that. That's good to start with. And then I can slide that thing in and out here to line it up. All right, looked right out. That was nice. There we go. All right. It's 13mm. You don't want to tighten these all the way. I'm just snugging it like that for now. I'm going to put on all the rest of these bolts. All right, I've completed putting all the bolts all the way around. I also put on this hanger right here. This is where the hanger goes for the exhaust. These are still loose, as you can tell. To tighten those 12 bolts on the tunnel closing plate, you're going to need a torque wrench capable of 25 Newton meters and a 13mm socket and probably a short extension. All right, I've got all the bolts done, all torqued on, and these are still loose, as you can see, because I want to set the car down on the ground first before we do this or tighten that big nut. Okay, the vehicle is on the ground, and I went on each 4 corners of the vehicle and jumped up and down to make sure that everything is sitting how the vehicle would normally sit. Now, if you remember, in my last video, I worked on this right here, the front engine mount. But that bolt number 20, I did not want to fully torque down to the 75 Newton meters. And the reason for that is I wanted to make sure that, that the vehicle was sitting completely flat. I didn't have the rear engine mount in, so the car could have been sitting this way, or the engine I should say could be tilting back and forth, and I wanted to make sure that when I tighten that final bolt that the vehicle engine and transmission is sitting in the direction that they both need to be. Now everything's at rest and where it should be, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. So you're going to need a torque wrench capable of 75 Newton meters. I'm using a 9-inch wobble extension and a 10 millimeter hex. All right, I'm under at the driver's side, and with this kind of a torque wrench, it's the one thing I don't like about it. When you're laying on the ground, it's impossible to see your screen. They need to have a screen that turns so you can get different angles on it. I'm holding a mirror so I can see. There it is. 75.4, I think. Yes, 75.4. Next, I need to torque the other side of this. And that's the torque wrench I'll be using. It's set for 8.56 Newton meters. Let's go do it. I want to make sure it's not turning down below. I'll show you how I got that wedged in there later. That's it. Now the way that I was able to hold that was by using this right here. It's just a piece of wood with an inner tube over it. So I stuck it behind there to hold that piston. Because the piston turns. You can hold that shaft on that one point all you want, but it does not hold the top part. But by having this as a rubber thing, I was able to put this right behind it and then put some pressure on it and crank it and get it torqued down. Okay, so now I'm on the right side, or passenger side. You see the colors here? This is why I didn't want to powder coat anything. That's all part of the restoration. You want to keep everything as original as you can. And if you do powder coat it, try to remember to repair that. That's what I say. Man, I tell you, 7,500 on your back is tough. There we go. There, 75.3. See how I had that wedged in there? So it'll just get tighter if it pulls it in. So here's my tip to you. Don't follow the manual. Before I got to 8 Newton meters on this, that nut actually stripped. So I had another nut, luckily. I have a whole box full of these nylocks. So I just changed out another one, and all I did on this one was snug it up. That's all you have to do. It can only go on so tight, you just don't want this thing to rattle. That's what it's really all about. So the next step, according to the instructions, is to tighten these to 25 Newton meters, number 20. $25.3. There we go. 25.3. Well, I torqued this down without you guys, and the reason is because there is no room under this car when it's not up in the air. It's just too tight, but I got my wrench on there. I don't know exactly what torque I did, but it's between 30 and 40. I don't have a torque wrench for this. Now remember, don't tighten this one bolt yet. The manual clearly tells you that you first need to run the engine for a short period at idle speed with that adjusting screw loose. Are we done yet? No, unfortunately, I'm not done yet. Because I removed the engine and transmission from the vehicle, I disconnected the ground strap. That's right, you see that little ground strap just sitting there dangling? I need to attach it to that bolt right there. You're going to need a 17 millimeter socket and a torque wrench capable of 55 Newton meters. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to put that strap on, and the reason is that now that I've dropped the car all the way down on the ground, there's not enough distance between the ground and that bolt to be able to get my wrench in there. It hits the concrete floor. So instead of jacking the vehicle up again, instead what I think I'm going to do is not attach that. As a matter of fact, I was also going to attach those cooling lines. Here's on the left side, that cooling line goes right there. Another look at it right here. If you notice, I got a little white stripe on there. Well, if you've watched my video, that white stripe tells me that I haven't torqued that down yet. Same thing on the other side. That line, cooler line, goes down there towards the bottom by the dipstick. And there's another angle at it right there. So I have not done either of those either. So what I'm going to do is instead move on, because in the next video I'm going to do all the vacuum lines instead. So I'm just going to bypass this right now, and then I'll come back and get this when I do all the exhaust system. That way there I'll be having the whole vehicle right off the ground as high as I can get it, and give me all kinds of room underneath there to complete everything underneath. So let's just pretend that I did this for the sake of this video, and let's move on. Well, we only have 2 more things to hook up on this transmission. By looking at this picture, can you tell what those things are? Well, the first thing is that Bowden cable. It comes up along the right hand or passenger side and gets connected to that little bracket right there. And it gets connected with this special little clip right here. And I'll show you how that goes on, but it's pretty straightforward. You can see what that looks like. It's like a cup on one side and flat on the other. That flat side, which is this side, fits in that groove right up in there when this thing's attached. And then the cup faces the cable out. So that cable needs to fit behind here. So it's impossible to see, but you can see I've exposed that cable. That cable's going to have to fit in there just like a bicycle. You can't really see it, but now there it is. So I have it in. But now I will try to put on the clip. Just like that. Now it's locked in there. It's all in there. Now we'll put this boot on. And then this other part plugs on to this right here. Just like that. So now we're all hooked up. Bowden cable, done. So I have one last thing I need to connect. Have you figured out what that is yet? It's on the other side of the transmission. It's that modulator valve right there. That has a vacuum line that connects from there and goes all the way up over from this left-hand side and goes up to the top right-hand side and comes up right through here. And then it finally comes up and around and plugs in right there. This has one that plugs into the firewall here, and then one that goes off to the side. It's right next, it's the right rear of the engine, right next to this coolant line right here. That's what this is for. It's for the coolant hose, for the heater and all that. But that's it. I think we're finally done installing this transmission. Until the next time, you guys, thanks again for watching.